Tell me when to roll. Okay, everybody. Thanks for being here, everyone that's here. We have a contingency from the police department. We're apparently expecting some kind of trouble because we have 3 officers. I'm a little nervous about that. I didn't see anything that contentious on the agenda, but I guess we'll get to that when we get to that. We will commence with the prayer or thought by Jeremy Redd, followed by the pledge.
Heavenly Father, we're thankful to gather here tonight in this city council setting. We're thankful for the various blessings that have been poured out upon our community, and we ask for thy continued guidance and blessings to be upon us. Please help us to receive the rain and the snow that we need to continue to fill our reservoirs and thrive here in this area. We're thankful for the employees of this city. We're thankful for those who provide the services that us as residents rely on and use. We're thankful for those who give their time to serve in city council and mayoral capacity. And we pray thy blessings upon them and help them to be wise in their decisions, that we may do those things that are in the best interests of the residents of this community. Again, we're thankful for the blessings we enjoy. We pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have any comments or correction on the minutes?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda minutes and financial disbursements.
I'll second it.
Perkins and Bowers, all in favor?
Aye.
Sound like everybody, any opposed? Thank you. We've got our usual note there for any particular conflicts of interest, so not really seeing anything that would apply there. We do have time for open forum, occasion for anyone wishing to address council. We're here to listen to you, maybe engage a couple of questions clarifying, but otherwise just to hear. Does anybody wish to address council? Seeing none, we'll move on into reports. Water, Terry Ecker.
Right, Mayor and Council, you have the September water report in your packet for 2020. Jeremy's going to get that pulled up on the whiteboard. September is the end of the water year through September per state. That's kind of how they look at it. And then that always gets a little confusing because blending irrigation water year ends October.
That's right. Yeah, I thought they were the same. So I was, yeah.
So we ended, 83% or so of average annual precipitation, which is not where we want to be. It's been a very dry second half of the water year. Reservoirs are looking okay-ish for this time of year. You know, we started off full, but runoff didn't last as long, so we started to lose a little bit of ground, maybe quicker than we normally would there. Are there any questions on the water report?
Right, good. Thanks, Terry. Chief Bradford, police.
Mayor and Council, as far as the police department goes, we're just kind of about par for the course with last year. Other than we've had a few more incidents, about 26 up from last year at this time. We're finally full staffed again. Just got Chris back. Got back Thursday night last week, so we're really happy to have him. He did well in the academy. I actually spoke to one of his training sergeants who spoke very highly of him and says he's going to be a good solid officer. So we're very pleased to have him on board. Sergeant Hillhouse did about 17 hours of training through the month of September. He had 1 hour of firearm and 16 hours of TAC. He's our computer person for the state of Utah that helps us stay in compliance with the Bureau of Criminal Identification, the computer systems, and things that way, so we know what we're doing and not violating any state laws that way. So we have a staff meeting tomorrow. Jared will give us some more training on that. We'll take a test to stay in compliance, and that's about it for us. The calls are staying just about normal where they are at. Domestic assaults are about the same every month now. They've kind of seemed to have leveled out, which is good. Our intoxicated persons actually has dropped a little bit over the last month. So.
How are things at the jail? I think we talked about that a little bit last time. About
Having the jail take people has helped us a lot. We're not sending everybody over, but people that we don't have another option for right now, they're taking, and that's helped immensely. So, county for opening their doors to us and to themselves a little bit, so it's been very beneficial.
Was that it for your report? But you got another order of business, I believe.
Yes, we've got Officer Sanchez here. We'd like to get him sworn in.
Let's do that. Chris, good to have you.
Welcome, Chris.
You gotta come up here in front of the camera so everybody on
Looking
YouTube.
good in that uniform. That looks great.
Thank you. Is your mom watching live on YouTube? Oh. Okay. You're gonna raise your right hand. You're gonna repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend
That I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and that I will discharge the duties
and I will discharge the duties
of my office with fidelity.
of my office with fidelity.
That's it. There's-
We got the correct wording on that. I was watching that.
We try to not mess things up more than once.
Once is good.
So does Chris go, does he just go straight out onto the street?
No, he's got a few weeks of field training, orientation, or
With your staff?
yes, get to ride around with all of us and make sure he's up to speed on knowing how to write citations and investigate the crimes and do the DUI and that stuff. We'll get a checklist to make sure he's good to go, and then we'll turn him loose when he's good.
Very good.
We
have enough
Because he's already up to speed on a lot of the computer work because he's come from the county and knows all that stuff.
Congrats.
Okay,
Love that.
all right, moving on. Rec report, David Palmer.
David is hunting, so I'll do his rec report for him.
Run away with it.
Let's see what trouble we can get into here. I think you see the report. Wondering if there's any questions. Flag football finished. We talked last time about girls basketball and how we were gonna do registration for basketball and the social distancing, and apparently that's not a social event, so we're good to go. We can keep it the way it is. We're gonna ask people to social distance and consider wearing a mask if they can't. So that's the wording that we used on the sign-up sheets. I know,
change.
no, it shouldn't. According to Kirk, it shouldn't change. We should still be able to do that as far as I understand. Pools winterized, parks, the water is now turned off. We waited a little bit to keep the grass green for the fall festival, but now we'll start winterizing all the parks. I guess now would be a good time to talk about the fall festival. It's not really recreation, but I think it went really well. And
Well, it doesn't have its own agenda item, and so I like where it fits there. And I was able to go down and wander through and watch people just having a lot of fun, and the variety of the booths was amazing. The whole thing. There's too big of a list of people that are involved in making that happen to start naming people, but to everybody that's involved, the city staff and other volunteers and just on and on, it was fantastic. And I hope we can springboard that to an ongoing fall event every year and really make something that will start to draw not just our community, but others as well.
But I think, I'll steal your thunder, but I think Cheryl's comment was just right. It was great for the residents to have something that felt normal and fun And it was outside and I saw people sitting as families and they were plenty distant from other people, if that's what you wanted to do. And it was just a fun night. So I think it wouldn't have been possible to do that during the 4th just because of the people that come in for that, but it was great. It was really, really good. So thanks for sponsoring it.
It was
Paying
awesome.
for us, City Council.
Yeah, I just want to add my thanks. I thought it was tremendous. And I thought, especially the fireworks, everyone was social distanced. I felt very safe and comfortable and just very normal. It really did. That's what the way and right now normal is good. That normal feeling is good. So, and we can't say thanks to everybody, but if I can just comment on Pratt, I wish he was here to say thanks to Pratt because I know he took a huge lead in that and that is not an easy thing to do. So thanks to everyone and special thanks to Pratt.
Absolutely.
Okay. Moving into agenda items, resolution 1013, 2021-1. Authorizing or approving an increase or decrease in the participation of development cost under the carbon-free power project. That's made summarized. So there's a lot of politics surrounding the carbon-free power project, and then there's the science, and I really wish the science could prevail.
Mayor, can I go back to recreation
Sure, what do you
for
got?
just 1 second? So there was some postings online about the condition of our parks. And so I asked them to just send me pictures personally of the concerns. I just think it's important to say it in a city council meeting that it's something that I think we need to look at, and I will bring it to you and we'll bring it to David and the pictures that they've forwarded to me so that we're addressing it.
And to comment on that, I did the same thing and we took care of issues last year. Same kind of issues, very similar. I think even probably the same places. But I went and took pictures and Jeremy, David and Kristen have that.
You sent their pictures to them.
So if you go look now, all of that was repaired before the fall festival, at least and I have some of the things, really a ton of damage done. And so
it's vandalism.
Yeah.
well, it is, it really is because
Some of it
there's,
looks like normal, but there's
there's
some
some-
of it that is very much not. normal.
I can show you after the meeting, there's some pretty heavy cables that were cut and I don't think you can do that with just normal wear and tear. Big,
Especially when we had it looked at last year.
so
Do we have Wi-Fi at that park from when they
we
did
now
the?
do, and I think we need to
So-
get some cameras
Yeah,
up, but
totally agree.
But again, we need to be watching for those situations where there could be a potential danger and fixing them. So, but they were repaired before the fall festival. So
Well, and I saw a little bit of this online activity and the clear kind of message that was coming across, somewhat uninformed, I believe, was that it's just falling apart and we never do anything to maintain it. But the track record is that we do things to maintain it, and when things are brought to our attention, they've been repaired, and that there's been an ongoing problem. It's not that we've just neglected the park.
But I think if that's how residents are seeing it, that's a concern. And
Right.
I think that, I just wonder if David should put some sort of process in place that people are checking those on a regular basis, a monthly or
absolutely.
weekly basis, where he's got someone going over and scanning so that we're not putting anyone in an unsafe
A little more
situation.
proactive, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I agree, helpful. And I don't think it was unsafe, but it needed some repairs. So what happens is you cut those swings that the kids stand on and they're tethered to the bottom and the kids want to swing on them. They want to, and so that's what happens is they cut that, or they,
Rather than a balance feature, they want
rather
like
than a
tire
balance
swing.
feature, they want a big swing that it's not intended to be. And so they cut it. I mean, we've had other
Electrify it so
issues.
that the
We've had
gutters-
people drive their cars onto the surfacing. I mean, we really need residents' help as well to keep the parks in good condition. If we do things that they're not intended to be done with, it's going to be a tricky situation. But I agree with you, and we'll put something.
They commented on the volleyball nets not being up. Is there
Yeah, I noticed that too.
a reason why they're not? Are they supposed to be up year round or do we take them down?
I don't know that, but they should be up right now. I mean, until it's too
Yeah.
I
cold.
believe we took them down last year with no, not last year. In the past, we've taken them down when we take the netting and stuff down before
Before it
so we did it
snows.
last year. Because
But I'm
So they
guessing.
just never got put back up this year is what it sounds like.
I don't
They
know.
said they've
I
been
don't know
down.
how long they've been down. there. There's just is there one or two?
It may have been damaged and hasn't been, I don't know, but those are good comments. I mean, if people see things that need attention, we want to know about it.
Yeah.
The very best way probably is to let the city know rather than going on Facebook. Because, then we have to see it on Facebook. Somebody has to let us know. If they let us know, we can take care of it quickly.
Absolutely, completely agree. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay. All right, so we had the intro to that. So Jeremy, you want to kind of bring us up to speed where we are on that?
Yeah, and we went through this a couple of weeks ago. I think most everybody was here. So I'll go through this rather quickly. If you remember, and I've updated some things as we've had changes to the project. We meet every Thursday to discuss the project. So there are changes that happen almost every week. I think this is a project overview. Everybody understands what the carbon-free power project is. We are still working on the DOE support of $1.4 billion over the next 9 years, which is a huge effort by the DOE to support the project. So let's look, our participation history, our peak use right now is around 5.8 megawatts. That was in January of 2020. We initially went in at 6 megawatts. We reduced to 2.5. The jump module came on. So we now have a total subscription of 3.496, 3.5 megawatts. And that's just a little bit of history on where we've been with this project. Currently 1.64% of the total project. So some of this has changed a little bit. You can see our 1.64%. Right now we're sitting at about $78,000, just over $78,000 in sort of liability that we would have to pay back if we withdrew from the project. We would have 12 months to coordinate that payment, but we have already paid over $50,000 when it was what was called the study phase. And then we also have $65,000 sitting at UAMPS in an account for development of new resource that came from the IPP project years ago, settlement on that. So we're in the positive right now. We wouldn't have to pay anything. A little bit of what's changed right now through April 2023, we're looking at moving on to the next phase of the project that lasts until April 2023. It went from 19 million down to 13.2. So they were able to shift some of the project past that next phase to make it a little bit less expensive or less risky for everybody. So that's really good for us. So that's why I'm really recommending now, instead of a 1.64%, we look at a 2% max share of the project, which would be a maximum total of just under $265,000. Of that, we've either paid or have on retainer 115, almost 116,000. So our risk is fairly minimal to continue on. And then one thing I want to recognize is that this 13.2 million is if we go all the way to April 2023. Anytime the project terminates before that, we won't have spent that much money and our cost will be less. The one thing that we're really looking for right now is subscription on the project. So everybody recognizes that there are some cities who have withdrawn from the project, and the bulk of those cities really didn't need the power resource. So for instance, I talked to Bountiful, and not to put words in their mouth, but they're long on power right now. They have power that they're selling every month. So for them to take the risk on a resource that they don't really need isn't that big of a deal for them. And so they may do something different. Kaysville was in the same boat. So there's a couple of those cities that really didn't need the
Where are they
power.
getting their power from? What source?
The biggest one that other people have that we don't have is called IPP. It's Intermountain Power Project in Delta. And that's a big coal project that's switching to a natural gas project. So they're going to have natural gas resource instead. So our current choice, and it doesn't have to be made today, but I would recommend we do. I don't think anything's really going to change substantially. With each off-ramp, we have the choice to increase, decrease, or terminate our participation in the project. So the key to de-risking the project is more participation. And everybody knows this. So every city, they're hammering on this. We really can't move forward with the participation that we have, but they're working with other entities in the Pacific Northwest specifically to try to drive participation. And that is the big push now. The cities that remain in the project and continue to make it go, we have to have other cities and other agencies adding to our participation, or it just can't go. There's just not enough. So we're looking for like that anchor tenant, that Dillard's in the mall that that can take a huge chunk and be a big participating member. But, so that's the real push going forward in the next little while. So that, again, the end of phase one licensing, there's a couple things that can happen. We could go all the way to the end of the development period and spend the $13 million, at which point we would have another choice on what we want to do. We could decide to withdraw or cancel the project due to convenience or subscription. If UAMPS as a group decides to cancel the project, what's called the project management committee, then Blanding would have to pay its share of the cost to that point. We kind of talked about what those would be. If the project fails what's called an ECT, an economic competitiveness test, then 100% of the cost reimbursement up until that April of 2023 would be paid back to us. So we would actually get our money, all of our money back. And that's if the project, every time they run this test, goes over $55 a megawatt hour in 2020 dollars, then they fail the test and we get the money back. So that's another way that we wouldn't be out anything. We would have all that reimbursed. So let's see, I want to show you something that's really, some of this we already talked about, but this is a real world example. So I think this is where the rubber hits the road. And we talked about this a little bit, but our Colorado River last month, this is from last month's utility bill, Blanding's August utility bill with UAMPS. Our Colorado River storage was $26 at the dam at Page, hydropower. Our San Juan, which is our coal project, was over $80. So you can see that coal is really the way they've driven up the cost. It's no longer competitive. The PX is where we go out and I buy blocks of power for the city. And so I bought a block of power for August and it was at $71. So we pre-purchased that in the spring to make sure we had power to cover us, but you can't buy all your need because you don't know exactly what you're going to need. Horse Butte wind was $93.74. That one goes up and down depending on how much wind we get during the year, during the month. So we pay all the fixed costs. And if we get a lot of wind, that price goes down. If we don't get any wind, we pay a fortune for it. So then whatever isn't covered by those four resources, we buy on what's called the pool, which is just the spot market at the time. So if everybody remembers what happened in August, wildfires in California combined with the smoke to obscure the solar panels. So there was almost no solar power produced in California in August. And then there was a lack of wind. I mean, you can see our Horse Butte was almost $100. That's really bad. There was no wind and the solar panels were covered. They had rolling brownouts in California because there just was not enough power to take care of the needs. There was nothing to turn on. And they literally were people just didn't have power. They just lost power. And we saw hourly prices as high as $1,000 a megawatt hour on the spot market when that happened. If you could get power, you were paying super high prices.
And the people who are trying to talk entities out of the carbon-free power project are telling them it's too expensive, too expensive.
Too expensive.
These
And
are the
everything,
costs of the real world.
yeah, and everything can be covered by wind and solar.
Yeah,
Well, it can until it can't. And when it can't,
it's not rational.
it's a
I'm
disaster.
curious about your recommendation to go to 2% because we're at 3.5 at 1.65.
Let me finish this one and then I'll
Okay,
explain.
because that's feeling a little high as a total percentage of our, maybe all of us said we're overbought if we push it that
Well,
far.
we won't be, and I'll tell you why.
Jeremy, I remember you went through this a month and a half or so ago, and I remember the pool at that time was a lot lower.
Yes.
And that's what you're speaking to, just
Sometimes,
fluctuates a ton.
yeah, sometimes we're buying out on the pool for $30 or $40. It just depends on, so if there's a ton of solar power out there, sometimes California is paying other people to take their solar power because they're producing so much that they can't use if the solar is doing well in California.
And then,
But so let me run through this and then so in that pool at $149, we purchased 700,000 kilowatts in August. So we paid $104,000 for that piece of our power, the pool purchase that we made. And it was $150 a megawatt hour. If we would have had a $55 carbon-free power project resource, we would have paid $38,000 for that same power. So 1 month for the city of Blanding, it would have resulted in a cost savings of over $66,000. So when we're looking at this and these are big numbers and we're saying, we're gonna spend another $250,000 or whatever. It sounds big and it feels like a big investment until you realize what we're spending when we don't have the resource. And 1 month we would have saved $66,000. And if you had a nuclear option, you could turn it on, you can run it, and you could sell it to California. You can sell it. It's carbon free. They can take it. People will be happy with it. So anyway, what was your question there?
Just, you explained previously about us owning shares of these different projects. Do entities ever buy and sell their shares?
Not really.
I mean, it can happen, but it just isn't very common.
Yes. The only time I've seen it since I've been on the UAMPS board is when Eagle Mountain sold their system, and then they had to divest their interest in these different ownership of different things. So it doesn't happen very often. I would love to sell our share of San Juan right now. No one's going to buy it.
Good luck finding a buyer.
So what happens is if it's a high resource, nobody wants to buy it. If it's a low resource, you don't want to sell it. That's usually what happens. So, yeah. So let me explain this. Let me go to let me see, I need to stop the share here. And I'll answer the mayor's question from this screen here. Here's why we're not actually adding more. In fact, we will end up with less resource because if we didn't put in the 2%, where is this resolution? So what's going to happen right now is we're at 3.5 kilowatts. And if we stayed at 3.5 kilowatts, and the project, say we're at, what were we at, 173 kilowatts total, but some cities drop out. So now we're only at 100 kilowatts or 100 megawatts total. And we're 3.5. Now we're 3.5% of the project. And so that's what I don't want to have happen. We don't need 3.5 megawatts if we're 3.5% of the project. That's now we're taking on a bigger share than we really want to take on. And so the 3.5 megawatts isn't the number that's going to matter. It's the 2%. We're going to have less kilowatts than that, and we're going to be at 2%.
Okay, because you're capping it that way.
Yes.
It's kind of an either or. We're
It's
going
an
to get
either
this
or.
much or 2%.
It's an either or. So what I'm recommending is, let's see the way this is. The participant hereby authorizes the continuation of the entitlement share of 3.496 megawatts or increasing or decreasing its entitlement share by the necessary kilowatt of capacity to maintain no greater than 2%. So if everybody stayed in, we'd still be at 1.64 and we'd be happy.
I'm feeling pretty good as technical as some of this stuff is that my question was actually relevant.
Well, it was
I'm
totally
very proud of that.
And then section B, you would authorize your UAMPS representative to go up or down 10%, not 10% total, but 10%
of our piece.
So if we got there and it was 3.496 and we need to go to 3.5 to make it work, we could go up or down 10% to make it, to kind of smooth things out. So it's a very small adjustment that you're allowing there, but
As long as it doesn't go over 2%.
as long as it doesn't go over 2%. Yeah. So I think it's the right way to go, because otherwise, if you don't put in the 2%, what's going to happen is everyone's going to adjust their allocation, and then it's going to put us over the 2%. And then we're going to have to come back and do it again. And then when we adjust, other people might adjust, and then we're back doing it again. And so this way, what we're saying is we're comfortable with up to 2%. And let's see where that goes. Let's see where we can go with that, because we know what 2% of the $13 million is, if that makes sense. And we're comfortable with that number. Is this clear as mud to everybody? You will technically have another chance if people adjust. We could come back probably in November and adjust again if we're uncomfortable with where we're at. But I think by putting in the 2%, we'll be comfortable with where we're at.
It's a built-in flexibility with the cap for that we're comfortable with. So, Jeremy just flies through all of this really technical stuff just like that. And I spoke to somebody today who said that they would they would be our city rep at UAMPS that has experience equal to Jeremy's, because it's Jeremy. For as long as we need him to, when he's no longer the city administrator, which is a later administrator item. But that's one of my things of heartache has been, okay, what happens here?
Questions.
And anyway, we have time to figure it out. We can get it right. So.
So Jeremy, I'm sorry, can you go back to item B? Because it doesn't read that way to me. It reads, it almost reads as if we can increase our development cost share up to 10%. Am I reading that just completely wrong? By and up to 10%. So when I read that the first time, I thought, well, you mean we can go from 2% all the way to 10%?
So you're looking for language that specifies that it's relative
A max
to
of
our,
2%, if
to
that's what we
our
mean.
participation.
I'm actually not even
I see.
necessarily of myself personally, I'm going a little higher, but 10%, I don't want to go that high. So maybe I'm just reading that wrong, but it looks to me like we're saying, we'll do up to 10%.
I think that up to the 2 probably needs to come out.
Yeah, you're right. The way that reads is kind of funky. And I think, so what happened is this was boilerplate language B. And then we added,
be
I
up to
added the
2%?
2%. And so the boilerplate language would say 3.496, and then you could go up or down 10% from there, if that makes sense.
But we don't want
So
our total development cost share to be over 2%.
I'd be
Is that what we're
comfortable
saying?
just removing B. If you want the cap to be 2%, I'm comfortable just removing B, because that wouldn't allow us to go down, but I don't really see any reason we'd want to go down from 2%. So if everybody's comfortable with that, we can just strike B and approve it that way.
Well, if that works for you, because otherwise, I think Cheryl's question is really good. I think you'd have to be clear that the 10% is relative to our participation
Yes.
share, not the project.
Or it
Yes.
should say by and up to 2%.
Let's just strike B. We don't
Just
really
strike it.
need that flexibility.
Sounds good.
We don't need it.
Because the either or is already granting us the flexibility that we're looking for.
It was language that if you didn't have the 2%, then you were locked into an exact number, but they wanted some flexibility to go up or down a little bit, 10% of that number.
The way
We
we
don't-
structured ours, we already have it.
We don't need it, so we'll eliminate B if that's comfortable to everybody. We don't need that. And I don't want to be able to go to 10% of the entire project cost.
Right,
at My
right.
discretion.
I agree. It could be
very
read
bad.
that way.
Yeah, it reads that way, actually.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Okay.
that was a good catch. So I think that's all I have, unless you have other questions. I would.
I'll motion that we approve resolution 10-13-2020-1 with the changes that we talked about, striking B.
I'll second it.
It's the Logans, all in favor?
Aye.
Sound like everybody, any opposed? Okay. All right, public art installation discussion, Logan Monson.
I think I'll let Jeremy speak to it. We've talked a couple times about it and made a couple different changes that we talked about at our last meeting.
Yes.
Do we want to talk about the overarching philosophy before that, or do we want to talk about this agreement?
Well, let me tell you what changes I made, maybe if you wouldn't
Okay.
allow me. Just, we added this wording that you came up with last time as a council, that installations and blending must reflect the cultural and natural beauty of the area and its residents. That was sort of it must be this. This is all we're going to approve. And Kendall
Those Kendall's
thought
words.
that may or may not be helpful. We may still get ourselves into trouble, but it's better. So we added it up there. We also added it down here under number 1. Artwork must reflect the cultural and natural beauty of the area and its residents. So when they're doing their written description associated with the artwork that they want to do, they really need to explain how this meets this. And it feels like maybe there was one more
Yeah, just.
spot
Yeah,
under
that's a
H,
big-
the appropriateness. Again, what is appropriate? And Kendall went through that. Should address a commitment to enhancing public places, keep creating a sense of place, giving character to neighborhoods, and the artwork must reflect the cultural and natural beauty. So we're continuing to kind of hammer that, hoping that gives a purpose to this policy. I also added one little thing here under artistic freedom of expression. It's the policy of the city to encourage free expression by artists consistent with due consideration of the value, aspirations, the city's public art purpose, and goods of the city. So again, we're tying it back to, yes, you have your freedom of expression, but it has to tie in with our purpose. It can't just be a free-for-all. So any comments on that, Kendall, as far as?
I think we're in a better place
Better?
when we started, for sure.
That's really all I changed, so.
Okay.
I don't know what discussion you guys.
So I guess I have a question. Okay, is this just referring to art or are we referring to a memorial?
So I've kind of gone back and forth in the idea of what it would do. And I, after talking to Jeremy and going over this a little bit more, my idea is this is an art policy.
Can I tell you where I am, just so you all know where I'm at as far as memorial goes? I've thought about it quite a bit, you know, and if you'll indulge me for 2 minutes.
Of course.
You know, I thought of Irvis Shumway and Johnny Eaton, you know, and my nephew Eldon, and then Eldon's grandpa, Charlie Carroll and those Boy Scouts, you know, and Robert and Renee Laws. We've lost a lot of people to tragic car accidents, and we're going to continue to do that. Yeah, that'll happen. Things will happen, and so and that's a sad thing, but it's a reality. And so as I was thinking of memorials, I went out to the cemetery and I looked at Nathan Winders. Nathan's buried in Arlington, and the family has put up a memorial for him. You've probably seen it, a pedestal with the boots and the rifle and helmet. And to me, if we're going to memorialize someone, that's the place we do it. And the interested parties can go get a plot of land there and erect a monument or memorial to a person there. And this is my opinion, the idea of memorializing in the city, to me, that's not where I would want to be on that. I would do it in the cemetery. But if you're talking about art projects and things that aren't memorials, that might be a different thing. But I just wanted to put that out because I missed the last meeting. Just want to let all of you know that's where I'm at personally with memorials.
Yeah, and after me personally, after talking with other people, I'm in a similar place as far as that goes. I think that I'm glad that this policy is getting put together and that we're working on it because I think it's important to have something in place. But I also wanted to make sure that we together weren't basing a policy off of a specific project, because I feel like if you plan a policy around a project, something's going to fail, whether it's the policy or whether it's the project. But another thing that we have talked about is a way to memorialize people or events or anything really is kind of separate from this, which I think it should be, is maybe having an option of doing park benches in places and allowing people to buy a standard park bench for anybody. Doesn't matter what it's for, what the purpose is, but that would be an option separate from this, which is not what we're discussing tonight, but it's an option that we thought about.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you knew where I was at on that.
Perfect, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think we plan to bring the park bench idea back.
Yeah, we're still working on that, yeah.
You know, a family could buy a bench or it would have a very small, dedicatory.
Whether you buy it in memorial of someone or whether you buy it in memorial of a purpose, or you want a park bench here and you want to donate it, just
Cancer
have
artists or
yeah,
whatever you want
whatever
to
it
do
is, have an option.
within reason.
Thank you.
Be good. Is that a good attorney thing to say? Within reason?
Depends on how you define reason.
I could see a comment on there that we weren't real happy with. And we may not be. Maybe I'm thinking too.
You're thinking like lawyer and you should stop, it hurts.
I'm like going, stop by your head.
That's actually not a bad idea, because Monticello does have their veteran memorial. That's right in their city park, right in the center of their town. That's beautiful. And they've taken that opportunity to memorialize those who have died in service to our country. But so that would be a way to maybe do that same thing in a different way without it affecting actual art projects within the city like that.
We have a Veterans Memorial
Right.
from the Visitor Center.
Yeah, that's true.
Keep thinking about it, or
Any other
Well, you know
thoughts
what,
on this?
I went to Mapleton recently, and as you go down the main street in Mapleton, on the end of each street, there are art projects.
Mhm.
You know, and I've been to a lot of cities where that's the case, where they do have public art, and I guess make a policy for that. I can maybe buy into that. But yeah, other places do that.
I really like your thinking on that, because that was kind of part of the problem that came up is it was originally thought of as a memorial, and then that became problematic for a number of reasons. So I said, well, let's make it an art project. It's on the side, it's a memorial. And that's kind of where that discussion was going, and by creating a definition and say, there's a place for memorials, and you have to have a deep family connection or be buried there to be memorialized there. That creates some parameters really quick for the cemetery district to kind of watch over what gets put there. But having a policy at that point, then we don't have a project that we're discussing. We're talking about a policy in the eventuality that somebody comes with an art project. We're already prepared ahead of the curve to
That's what it had to
contemplate
be
that.
For me,
And that's where you're ending up with, and I like both of those ideas a lot. That's some really creative thinking.
But I don't want to come across as uncaring,
I by no means do either.
You know,
I don't want to be
but,
the one that says we shouldn't memorialize or remember people. I absolutely think we should, but in a way that's appropriate and in a way that's not. I don't want to cross an art policy with a memorial policy. I think it's two different things, and I don't know that a memorial policy fits in to a city's.
However, if someone wanted to create an art piece for them personally or their family is in a way to memorialize someone, it doesn't mean it would have to say that on there, but to them, I mean, they do kind of cross. As long as they meet this policy, they can do that, right?
But I did not want this to be I did not intend this to be, I mean, at first it came up because of a specific project. And I was all for it. And I still think the project is a great project. I think it has a good purpose, but I don't know if we should design a policy with a specific project in mind. And that's why I kind of took a step back and said, I think we really just need to have an art policy, and maybe in an alternate route for someone to do something very specific and generic. I don't know generic's the right word, but that everyone can do. And then if someone comes with an art piece that meets the art policy and to them it means something, great.
So is that something are you in that context, are you comfortable moving forward with an art policy as it is, so that we have something on the ground when the question get asked, we already have an answer? That's good policy.
I like the policy. Yeah, I like the policy that we have.
You want to keep working on it, or you
I like
ready to
the
make a
policy.
motion to run with it like as it stands?
I'm good with it how it stands, so I would make a motion to go with to approve the public art policy.
I want to ask a clarifying question. So what does this, where does this put us? Say this policy puts in place, it gets put in place, what does that change for us versus where we are now with that one? If there's a simple way to kind of state that, how does this help specifically?
it gives you a framework for, number one, the person making the application that would like to put the art in the community. And it gives a framework for what the city would be looking for and what they would accept. That's really what it does.
Because as of now, there's literally nothing. I mean, art is vague. I've seen some stuff that. So I mean, and obviously there's still a lot of subjectiveness to this, but at least there is something now that's okay.
And there's some interesting things that talk about temporary art installations, which I think could happen too. Somebody might be wanting to bring something through temporarily and put it up in the park and leave it for a month. And it talks about, addresses that if people want to do it. But I think it gives us a way to, number one, make them bring a proposal that has certain criteria that we can actually evaluate. Somebody comes and says, I want to do a statue. That's great. We want to see these 8 things. We want you to see you produce these, and then we'll decide if that's something that meets our policy. It's still a council decision. So you're still going to look at that and decide whether that fits, but it gives us some framework to use in that decision making.
So there was a project though that started this thought process, and we're creating kind of a separation between 2 different themes. Does that project still, they may choose to still make an application. So we want to do the art project. It's not going to be identified as a memorial. People who know that it is will just know that it is. Is that kind of how you're seeing that?
Yeah, I mean, if they
So
choose to go
it
forward.
could still
then-
qualify under this policy. It won't be defined as a memorial in that sense. Is
It'll be
that,
art.
it's strictly an art project, and those who understand its memorial purpose, they understand that privately. Is that kind of where you're thinking, Robert? Is that? Okay.
Yeah.
So they would have to decide how they want to approach it. Do they want it to be a memorial? Then we would encourage them to talk to the cemetery district. If it's an art project that's generically an art project, then we would have a policy in place that would govern that.
Ultimately, if someone wants to do something like this and they don't want to follow this policy, they can put it on private property, and I mean, there would still be codes and things that they would have to comply with, but. private property is that-
Logistically, what are we looking at? Where are we looking at putting art? Just by the South Chapel, because that's what was presented that a few weeks ago, or
I think that.
or does this address that? Where-
Location doesn't really speak to location, does it?
Well, they
I heard it can't
propose-
cover windows.
They propose location.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But maybe the city would go out and say, we're looking for an art piece that we want to put in Triangle Park to replace the stacked rocks that we have. And the city is, we're open to that. If anybody would like to bring an art piece, maybe we would even commission one. And this would still give us a way to evaluate that. Okay, whoever wants to, we have $20,000. We'd like to commission an art piece. Bring us your proposal and look at these things, and we'll see if it fits, and we'll pick the one we like. And it's a pretty good policy. I don't know if there are a lot of people beating it down our door to do public art in our city, but
It might not get used for years and years, and somebody's gonna have to remember that it's there, similar to, I can't remember what policy it was. The
Similar to
event
all of our
sponsorship
policies.
policy that we passed 2 years ago, and we remember, somebody had a question, and we go, oh yeah, we actually did establish a policy. That was good.
There's now a folder on my computer that has
So-
them all in there.
Cool. Even better.
we just have to remember it's in
We
the
have to remember
folder.
there's a folder now.
Institutional memory is kind of a good thing to have. Okay, so we have a motion.
What was your motion? I'm
To
sorry.
approve the public art policy.
I'll second it.
Swanson and Bowers, any further discussion on the motion or the policy? All in favor?
I
I think that was everybody. So I think that's good. That's a good way to make policy, not in the specific. Mayor Turk would be proud of us on that one.
You'd be even happier if we got out early.
Okay.
I second that.
You better be careful how you say that. We might be done with the meeting. San Juan County 2021 budget request,
Okay,
wish list.
we'll try to be real political, knowing that the San Juan County attorney is in the room, and
I'll do this for you.
and that this is
Oh,
being
thank you.
live broadcast to YouTube. But I think everyone's aware of the issues that we had last year with our budget requests, even requests that were included in the interlocal agreement and really did not have the option of not being paid. because of coronavirus and different things, the county decided that it was in their best interest not to participate in some things. A lot of those we ended up okay on, like the airport. The FAA came through and said, we're not going to require matching dollars. So we didn't really need our match or the county's match. So we ended up okay on a lot of that stuff. They did pay the recreation funding this year. They didn't do any TRT, things like that. So this budget request is a little bit more aggressive, you might say, just trying to remind them of their responsibilities under the interlocal agreement. Some of these things are not requests as much as they are reminders, and here's what, yes.
So
I just don't know how they can just
Yeah.
not, like,
I
it,
agree. Especially the
to me, it's
TRT.
like, plus pay us what you owe us for
For
last year.
Yeah.
I don't
did we
understand
pay out
that
the
part.
TRT for this year?
What's that?
TRT tax went,
They did
Was not.
not give us any of their TRT money for this year. And the agreement is that they will match whatever we collected from the prior year. So we collected in 2019, they were supposed to match that in 2020, and they chose not to. So our choice as a city is accept that because the room taxes were way down. I mean, that was the justification, and ours were way down too. The hotel industry was hit hard. They weren't collecting that tax money, and so their justification was, we're not collecting it, we can't give it to you.
but then next year, as per the rule, be like, well, this is all that was collected next year. I mean, so that's.
So
not-
our choice,
I mean.
our choice,
I mean, I
and
know
probably the
you're
reason that Kendall
saying
left,
that,
is-
but that's
is-
not a good reason.
we can push enforcement of the agreement, which means probably legal means to get them to pay their share of the agreement. Like I said, most of the things, probably the TRT is the only thing that we ended up harmed on, because the airport was the other one that they chose not to pay half of. And there is language in there that says based on budget in the airport piece. And then the federal government did not make us do a matching.
The TRT argument doesn't hold water. If you collected $1 and you're supposed to split it, you got $1. If you collected $100 and you're supposed to split it, it's $50. Whether you got a lot or a little, it's a mathematical formula. Just because you collected less, the formula still applies. It's still due.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that, and I think everyone was aware of it, but their choice was not to budget for it and not to pay it. And so I guess I would look for whatever you want to do. If you want to try to recoup that from last year, we can.
What was the
I
total?
think we should.
I want to see 38.
Almost $40,000.
It is whichever way it would be on, in our accounting systems, that they still owe us, and if we owe them, I don't know. I mean, the TRT, that one's hard. That one's a hard one to swallow.
Well,
I agree.
and the struggle here too, though, is the conflict of interest with our attorney. So we would have to pay outside counsel.
We could have to do that.
And so how much is that going to cost?
A few $100 an hour.
So,
Just they said.
so
I'm not suggesting we do it, go that route necessarily.
Here's what I would do if I were you, and you can do whatever you want, but we are going to turn this in, and the county needs to take care of this request this year. And I think if they don't honor these requests, then we really have a problem. Now we're looking at 2 years. Remember, Monticello does not have an agreement in place with the county because they didn't renew theirs. Bluff has one, but it's not the same as ours. It doesn't give them a lot of these things. But I think we really push hard to go back to our agreement. We can go back if you want. I mean, those are the options. But you're right, we would probably have to hire outside counsel to represent us and go that route, go the legal route. But
Unless they would do it on contingency.
could be.
If I get your last year's money, then I get paid, and if I don't, I don't. Somebody who worth their salt might take that challenge.
So technically, last year's money probably isn't on our agenda for discussion. We can bring it up if anybody wants to really make that decision. We probably can't do it without
Do you
putting
know-
it on the
Do you
agreement.
know how much they did not reimburse us?
Almost $40,000 for TRT.
So that's the amount that's in here.
No, because now
No,
this amount
this
is
is-
2020's
yeah.
collection, estimated
So it
collection.
was about the same.
Yes. It's similar.
Okay,
Assuming, and I'm estimating the last 3 months of 2020 for their 2021 payment. It might be slightly different than that.
And that's to say that it really wasn't down that much this year versus last year.
If we have a good last 3 months of collections, which I think we will. I mean, things are looking pretty good. Roadways back open. I think, I don't know, you could probably tell me more, but it looks like
September
things are doing
1st,
better.
things have picked up tremendously.
Okay. And that's kind of my hope, is that October, November,
More that-
December collections are similar to what we collected last year. That's-
since what we're supposed to be talking about is this request, I support this request.
Okay. And that would be 25,000 for the airport, the recreation funding, which is based on per capita. We're really pushing hard. This year, our recreation took the brunt of recreation. We had the pool open, Monticello didn't. We ran a lot of the rec programs for the entire county, and other people didn't run programs because of COVID. So we're pushing hard for that. A $25,000 rec capital request that can come out of that same pot of funding for doing infrastructure projects.
They didn't
$40,000.
give
in
us
TRT.
25,000 last year either, correct?
Yeah, they didn't. And then we've asked for this for the last couple of years. We do own this pink house over here across from the South Chapel, and it's becoming a liability. We've asked them to waive the landfill fees and let us dump that. I understand why that is a different, request, but if you don't ask, you don't get it. So it is a blighted structure that we need to look at doing something with.
Okay.
So
Let me ask a question with the, in your letter where you're requesting those funds, will they let us know whether they're gonna honor that, or do we need to be watching that preliminary budget coming from the county? So
So
we're not blindsided. that
last
one day we
year-
see, oh, they didn't put it in there.
last year, Max sent me a letter at my request, but it was well after the budget was adopted. I just wanted something in writing saying what they had chosen to do.
Well,
When is the-
I
when
think
do they approve their
Preliminary budget isn't going to tell you very
It'll
much.
have
Theirs
to
is
be
end of the
approved by the
year.
first,
End
we
of the
usually
year.
approve it the second or first meeting in December, so I think it's last
the
year.
preliminary budget comes out?
It's supposed to be out
Should be out now.
at
right?
least 10 days before that meting.
And I think we have to have someone there to ask the question. Otherwise, you can't tell from what they present if this is included or not included.
Because it's too general.
Yeah, you have to dig.
I think it'd be okay for us to request to be able to go give our letter personally
I think so,
as
too.
part of their budget process, if you'd like to. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea because we don't want to be blindsided that all of a sudden we find out we're not getting those funds. We ought to at least have an opportunity to stand up for ourselves.
We can
So
ask for
so
a
I'm just
proposal.
curious as to why we don't want to push. You're afraid if we push the TRT tax from last year that they may consider dropping our agreement altogether? I mean, is there?
So they can't drop the
You
agreement.
can't drop it. It's just that it's
There is
not,
no unilateral
Wait.
change. It's
there's
just,
nothing in this letter that contemplates last year, so it has to be a separate discussion.
but I'd be happy to put it on the agenda for the next meeting if you want to have a discussion on what to
Decide
do
if we
about
want to
last
pursue
year's.
that.
Because the county did receive a lot of CARES
They
Act
did.
funding that should,
Of offset.
And what I've heard that they've used it
and they
for,
may even be able to send some
It's
of that
concerning.
our direction for this.
right?
Because
I think we
marketing
should ask for
is one of the okay uses of that fund.
Well, let's add it to the next.
So maybe
item.
if we ask for
list.
them to allow us to have those funds from CARES Act funding through the marketing component, maybe they would be willing to give it to us that way. I just don't think you just let them off the hook for $40,000 when everyone was hurt, and that those funds are not only used for marketing, but it's also it can be used for our police and our streets and the damage that visitors do to the city, and they don't pay for any of those things. So I don't know. Let's do it as a separate item next meeting then. I think that'd be great.
Okay.
But this looks great to me too.
I
So
make a
did you have
motion.
You had yours as a motion.
I do now. Let's make a motion to approve this letter for the San Juan County 2021 budget.
second it. Okay, so that's Perkins and Turk. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're moving forward then. That's good. Gooseneck State Park, dark sky.
It should be really fast. I did get a request from Chris Hansen at Edge of the Cedars that the city make a letter of support for the International Dark Sky Association to make Gooseneck State Park an international dark sky park. I don't personally see any problem with it, but maybe others do.
I
Pretty simple
think
letter.
that Blanding City and the local residents as a whole are very supportive of national and state parks in their proper context. We've proven that historically. When they're not in their proper context, sometimes we're not too favorable.
Why do they want this? I mean, Dark Sky Association, they're a private something. They're a private.
It increases their visitorship if they can put that tag on there and say, you'll see the stars.
Can't they say whatever they want?
It's the it thing for state and national parks now to be a official dark sky park.
People come.
There's certain criteria. I mean, I don't like a lot of these things because, I mean, it puts things to where you cannot develop them and you can't do things if it makes sense there. It's like, oh, this is designated, there's a big long list of things. So it seems to me like they're their own entity that has their own criteria for determining what's a dark sky. Let them do what they want. I'm not really in favor of saying, yes, we want that to be a dark sky. If it's super dark right now and they want to call it that, fine. And
so you're wondering if there's strings attached to that designation that would.
I just don't know why we would care to designate it as such. And if then it turns it into then that makes it to where people can use that as, oh, this is a designated such and such. And therefore any type of development in the vicinity would therefore be bad. And I don't know. It's probably not a big deal either way, but my initial thought to this is, I wouldn't support, if they want to do that, fine. But that's my point is let's let kind of almost.
So you're concerned if anyone wants to develop around that state park, they'd be required to follow lighting issues and
Yeah, it just turns it into a
regulations
whole
that
new
we
thing. I
don't.
mean, we've seen things in the past recently around here about, such and such is next to this, and therefore makes it worse than it would have been otherwise, or I just don't see the benefit and why we would jump into something that's, I don't know why we would care as a city, to be honest. So that's my thoughts.
I think we need to care because Edge of the Cedars is in our city limits and Edge of the Cedars manages goosenecks. And what they're able to do at goosenecks helps offset the cost of Edge of the Cedars. And we should support Edge of the Cedars. And also, all of the land around goosenecks is either National Park Service land or BLM land. And so there's not much potential for much of anything out there private wise.
And I see your
This is
concern,
a really valid
yeah.
question, and that kind of addresses that. You're like, well, the same entities are already in charge of that, so is that potential negative impact even
Back
real?
to-
So that's a good question.
I mean, if they manage it, they can do whatever they want with it. They can call it whatever they want. That's why I don't know. It's still a confusing thing to me why this designation would come up. And then even though there's public land, there's lots of, Lake Powell, that's all, a public thing, but there's lots of business that can still happen there. So anyways, that'd be what I'd say about that. Just because there's no private land doesn't mean that.
So
Some
kind of what
people-
you're saying is whether we should let our support or not, they're going to get their designation and their visitors.
Yeah, I don't think the designation's bad. If that's theirs and call it what they want. I just don't really understand a lot of the details probably. Anyways, I've spoken to it. That's my
Okay.
thoughts.
Is there, I think it's a valid question. Is there any strings that come attached to them being a dark sky designation that would affect us?
Bridges is and has been and was the first ever. And so
And there are
They
people who
don't
stay at
need
my
this today. I
hotel.
could have Chris Hansen come to our next meeting and answer some of those questions if you'd like. My guess is they get the dark sky designation and because it's a private entity that gives this, if somebody did things and there was development and all of a sudden, probably most the entity could do was say, we're removing the dark sky designation because it's too bright out there now. But Chris would know more about that and I'd be happy to have him come. I think he has to have it by the end of the month, so we could have it. I could get answers for you, or we could have Chris come and give those answers at the next meeting if that's what you want to do.
it'd be interesting to see because it's kind of nice across government entities to support and to support each other in what you're doing if you agree with what that is.
So do you get people at your motel
I think it's an
looking for
interesting
stuff?
question.
Yeah, absolutely. I have people that come stay strictly to go to natural bridges and dark side.
So
dark
is this
sky
like a
designated
stargazing
areas.
thing?
It's a real thing.
Oh, yeah, and Natural Bridges does amazing star parties. They have,
Shoot lasers in the sky.
they have volunteers with telescopes that help you see just
So this is
some
a big
really
deal
amazing things out there.
I had to put a
a big
special
deal.
switch on the porch of my rental so that they could for sure turn that light off. Because it was hardwired. It was on if it was dark. And
I wouldn't be opposed to having him come talk.
I mean, yeah, I mean, but it's.
We'll get more information.
I
why
support
it
the
matters.
letter. I don't.
I mean, it probably really doesn't. I mean, if it's dark, and somebody should call it that. And so anyways, I mean, I don't have an issue with it being called a dark sky. And that's good. And there are some open weeps that way.
Just that
That's
is there
good.
is
And I
a
just,
reason for
it's like,
us.
why
to
are we
support
getting,
it.
like, yeah.
What's
I
the
would
why?
say that it's kind of like accreditation. Like there's different entities, universities, museums that look a little bit better if they go through a private accreditation. And that's kind of what that dark sky designation is it's this private seal of speciality. I don't know.
But it should be, I mean, in my mind, it should be just based off of certain metrics.
Like
and
that you go out there and it's
versus
dark.
Versus 5 people going and saying, yes, that should be, I mean, I
I
don't
know.
know. Anyways.
I'm
so
guessing
that's
are
plenty. So,
other things they look at
Anyways,
besides
no,
just our letter.
They'll get it with or without us, but they'd like to have it.
We'll at least get
Friendly
more
letter.
information, and if not, we'll have Chris come or both.
We're not beholden to anyone on this. Yeah.
Yeah, we do support. I mean, we do
Yeah.
want to support Edge of the Cedars and Chris and what he does
I mean,
too.
that said, I get, it doesn't probably matter that much either way. I mean, I'm okay with this if we want to do this now. I don't feel like there's gonna be a lot.
I'm
of
okay with the letter, but
expectation.
I'd like to maybe have.
I think if something starts, if they ask for it, it starts creeping closer to landing, I think you're 100% right on
And
that.
Edge of the Cedars could ask for it next.
Yeah.
And
Then. that
And
would be a
honestly,
concern.
they probably still are dark enough to be a dark sky park, even with the things around it, but I have no
Stars
idea.
Plenty good for my house.
I have
so.
no, yeah, right. And I can too, right in the center of town. So
Okay.
So the question is, do you want to have him come back or do you want to approve the letter? Because do you want to talk about it again?
I'm comfortable approving the letter, but I would like him to come back to help us
agree.
understand
That's fine.
dark sky. Because really, it could,
It's gonna come up again.
yes, it could.
Yeah.
We
I
should just
agree.
Smell like
understand
winter.
it better.
Okay.
So we'll make a motion for the letter. Do we need it?
Or motion to table or motion to approve?
I'll motion to table.
Okay, there's a motion.
I'll second that.
It's Monson and Perkins. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, bring it back. I think it's good questions.
Yeah.
That's
what I get for saying I can't see any reason why this. Never presume, so.
City manager employment advertisement, the woe is me.
Woe is
I
all
got
of
a
us.
call, a text that
Let's
said,
just
can you
table
come
this
see
one.
me first thing in the morning?
Table that one for 3 months.
Ominous feeling. The world is falling apart, and I found out that was true. It was falling apart. So Jeremy, very well deserved and over a considerable competition, has had an offer from another city, Washington City, to go and manage there. And it's not because he doesn't like Blanding or anything else, but he's made a choice that he thinks is the best for him and his family, which we will respect, and he'll be sorely missed. And anyway, I wanted, this is my vision of our process. Technically, I could pick somebody off the street and name them, and then you would say that's a stupid choice and not approve it. So we don't want to do that. And so I'm looking for how to fully engage the council in a process that is a mayoral appointment. And the only way to do that, the way that I want to do it, will require either as part of a regular meeting or as a special meeting to start as an open meeting and have any candidates that come forward to come and very briefly make a pitch to say, this is who I am, this is why I think I'd be good for the job, but not like details. And then we could go into a closed session for more in-depth interviews. And we would do that in order to have all 5 of us involved, because if we're all 5 involved, all 6, that's a meeting. So we're gonna be strictly adherent to the open meetings. By doing that, we can close that meeting because those questions in an interview are could be very pointed as to the job qualifications of that applicant, which falls under personnel, potential personnel. And I think we're qualified under Open Meetings Act to do that way and keep everybody in the loop. And then we'll kind of see where that evolves to. So we had, did we get the email out of the format of the advertising of the job?
Yes, I think everyone saw this.
I chose not to advertise the job until council had had an occasion to kind of review this and say, yes, we like that. Let's throw it out there.
So what we have here is, this was the city administrator job description that was approved in January of 2015. So it's 5 years old. I looked over it. I don't think there's anything really that has changed or needs to change. The only real question here represents the city on the UAMPS board of directors. That could be the city manager, or it could be someone else that you choose there. I mean, obviously you have some discretion with that, but that was one of my tasks. So there's that, and any applicant can see the job description. Education experience is always one thing to look at. Bachelor's degree in an applicable field, master's degree in a closely related field preferred, but not required. 5 years full-time work as an administrator or assistant, or any combination of education training experience that demonstrates that somebody has the skills and abilities to do the job. Those are really the qualifications. And then this is the job ad that we do for any position. The hiring range and the apply by, I think, are the things to look at here. Hiring range comes right from our the low to midpoint of our salary survey, but that's completely up to the council. And then the mayor kind of chose October 26th, which is only about 10 days for first review, which doesn't mean you have to close it, but anyone who wants to should jump on it quickly, because you could close it at that date.
Based on the quality of applicants that we're seeing.
And then this is pretty standard. I don't know if any of you have really actually seen this. We go through a little bit about what blending is like, and this is for any candidates who may not be local to the area. Talk about our community and the different amenities that we have here. And then it talks a little bit about the position and the ideal candidate, what kind of a person you're looking for. And then of course goes back into the compensation and benefits again. For this particular job, we have it, cover letters of any recommendation, resume someone would like to send goes straight to the mayor. And then he can work with you guys to whittle down the applicants to decide who you want to interview. So that's my
Okay.
I like that. I like the idea of it being a little bit more transparent by having the open meeting so people know.
Who's
That work.
applying and gets a feel
Yes.
for them a
Yes.
little bit.
And then I do understand the rest of it needing to happen in closed meeting, but I do like the idea of it starting in an open way.
Unless not everyone wants to be in the initial beginning stages and we won't have a quorum.
I'm interested in helping.
I'd like to be there. So.
What are you even talking about?
Sorry. Of course everyone wants
Yeah,
to be
no.
involved.
I'm not visualizing any of the 5 of you saying, I don't care who we hire.
No, I'm just in the beginning stage.
Because I could just go find somebody right now and bring them in.
Oh, no, I care very much about who we hire. I just didn't know if anyone knows. I was trying to save us having a special meeting, but
Well, I mean, it could just be part of a regular meeting too. It could just be an agenda item on there. And what I would do, I woke up early one morning with kind of this vision of how do I include everybody and make this work? And this is what I came up with. And I kind of reviewed this idea with Jeremy, and I'm comfortable that gets everybody in the loop and we do it by the book. And I'm concerned that we make sure that we're in compliance with that. And so then I kind of visualized 3 applicants, whoever they are, A, B, and C. And, if they want to do just a little brief introduction, this is kind of who I am. This is why I'd like this job. And we don't get into the details of their qualifications until the closed meeting.
all on the same day.
Yeah.
That way if someone's traveling down.
And so it's an open meeting. So we couldn't really ask the
Like
other
questions.
two candidates to be out of the room when they make their pitch. During the closed meeting, we can. But I would ask them to respect each other's, see, because somebody makes their pitch and the next one has a little advantage over, there's an advantage to coming third in that list.
I might give them a format. Maybe say this is what I was
Possibly,
looking for.
yeah,
in
I'm
this,
gonna,
where maybe
I'm
they
gonna
all
kind
have
of
something
define that.
there.
We don't
That's a
want a
good
lot, just kind of tell us who you
Yeah,
are.
exactly.
Who you are, why you
Just so
want
they
the
don't maybe
job.
share too
Yeah.
much there.
Right. But I would ask the other candidates to respectfully leave the room while each one makes their opening comment. But I can't really ask them to, because it's an open meeting and everybody is welcome.
For a guy that despises meetings, just have meetings, I would think this would need to be a special meeting instead of having
Possibly.
other agenda
If it was
items.
a really light agenda and it was the last item, maybe you pull that off. So that's good.
Because I want to go in there fresh and be able to make a
Well,
good
time,
choice.
the time is somewhat concerning to, and maybe it shouldn't be. Like, I just feel like we're losing Jeremy on the 1st of November, and that's 2.5 weeks away. And do we want to hire someone and then Jeremy leave and this person come? I don't know if there's any other option to that, and maybe that's not a concern.
The city is very well run with very competent staff and personnel, and we could go a month without an administrator.
But it's the training,
We could.
The
the
training.
training that's the concerning part, that they
There's some
won't
of
get to
that.
spend time with Jeremy.
We got a couple days, a few days.
I would suggest you get it right rather than get it fast.
Right.
though.
I agree.
So if you can do it right and fast, that's great. But
Because Jeremy's gonna come back. He's gonna.
well, I'm not dying. I'm still around.
I don't know, you're going to the St. George
Okay.
area. That's
gonna be-
kind of like the Florida of Utah.
No
For
comment.
all the old folks do.
I'm not going to touch that. But I will be available, even after hours to help. So,
Which is a magnanimous offer, but, life goes on and you'll have your responsibilities. And you need to be able to move.
I echo exactly what the mayor said, though. The city will run fine without me. Every staff member we have is doing their job in their department, and the day-to-day operations of the city will be fine. So take your time and get it right.
I kind of speaking to that, I had somebody several years ago that came and wanted to do some advice on my running of my business. And he asked one question. He said, what happens if you don't come to work for 2 weeks? And they said, everybody just does their job. And he says, okay, then I can work with you. He said, if everything depended on you, that's not a business I can work with. And that's where we are. The city's well run partly because of Jeremy's skills and the way that it's been done. You make yourself not day-to-day critical. You're doing it right. So, okay, we'll get it advertised and we'll see what bubbles up. Could be interesting.
Sorry, just on the salary,
Mhm.
that top is, there's, that scale shows us where they would be able to be at the top of that. Based
That's
upon
mid-range.
years.
That was
That's the
start
mid,
to
the
mid.
midpoint. And so with a typical
It looks like
position,
awfully high to me, I guess, maybe.
well, and that's really up to you guys to make that decision.
But that's what's in right
that's
now
what
in our
some of
pay scale system. That's what that is the mid-range,
Yes, and
So
so,
110.
the low to the mid.
so what you would expect on any position is that you would hire on the low end, and by 3 to 5 years, they would be to the midpoint. So to keep that in mind, and maybe you don't want to advertise it this way. Maybe you want to say, if there is zero chance you're going to hire someone at the midpoint, then maybe don't put it out that way.
Right.
Just say, our hiring range is from here to here, and we're probably not going above this. But if you had somebody who'd been a city manager for 10 years and they had, I don't know. It's really up to you,
That's a
but
tough
that's
one
how that
because
works.
You put it that high and then you don't pay them that wage.
could have an
You could have
expectation
somebody
set.
who's upset or
I agree.
feels like they're starting on a low point. That's my only concern with it, but I if someone has the experience and is absolutely wonderful and as
What-
good as you are, then maybe we'll.
One thing that
want them at that point.
sorry to cut you off. One
Sorry.
thing I have put before when we run into this situation with any, is I would put a line that says, we are expecting to hire at the low end of the range or something like that, just so that people are kind of aware. I do like putting a hiring range on there. If you just say, depending on experience, nobody knows what that means.
Right. No, you have to have an
But-
amount on there.
But I don't know. My salary right now is not near the midpoint. So
Right,
where do you want to be?
right.
Do you want to bring someone in at the midpoint, even if they have really good experience?
I don't foresee
If you
us
don't-
hiring
if
somebody
you
at the
don't, then
high
maybe
end, in
don't.
my opinion.
Maybe
I-
don't keep it up there.
Yeah,
That's up to you.
I
So-
definitely think the starting wage should be up there. There's no question about that. I just wonder if we should, I don't know what you guys think. That just looks really high to me and
You could say 92, 274 and up depending on
end up
experience.
depending on experience.
that-
Yes,
That just lets them know that this is the minimum, but
let's do that.
somebody
You guys
could,
okay
somebody
with
could
that?
try to make a case that they're worth more, $500,000. Is that-
People comfortable with changing that, so it doesn't have a number on midpoints gone, it's just 92, 274 starting.
Plus, depending on experience,
Yeah, some verbiage to that effect.
something, I can come up with something comfortable there.
I can see both ways too. I don't want somebody coming in and asking for 150,000 either, but I don't, hopefully we're not gonna have that.
I mean, and if you do, you say this is where we're at,
Yeah.
and they choose to, then we choose to do something as well. I'm good with it.
I think it's a good range and it will attract good applicants and that's what you want. So
When will this be available? When will it be posted?
I'd do it as soon as tomorrow morning if you approve it tonight.
Let's do it.
Oh, tomorrow.
And it'll just be on our website is where we put it.
Yes,
Official
yes.
places.
And then we will advertise it in the newspaper with a link to the website. So all of this won't be in the newspaper, but people can go. Typically, we put our ads on the Utah League of Cities and Towns website, which is a good place to get it out. Often with a city manager, we send it out to the listserv of all the city managers in Utah. And if they know of people that are looking to make that move, then they can pass it along. So we'll try to get it out there wide. I think you want to cast a wide net and see what you come up with.
So I'll make a motion that we start advertising tomorrow.
I'll second it.
So that's Perkins and Bowers, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's everybody. Much great regret and a heavy head, I'll advertise it. Or we could just say, no, you have to stay.
Is that a possibility?
That's, yeah.
You can say whatever you want.
Okay, is there any information items?
Wait, you missed Jeremy's. manager
Oh,
items.
manager items.
I didn't really have anything. I'll say goodbye next time. I'll be here for another meeting. So we did good things the last couple of weeks. How about that? That's my items.
Last, how many years? 16?
I've been here 13 years.
18?
Eight as the city manager. So
Mhm. Okay, well, in that case then, do we have any information items? Okay, no executive session I'm aware of.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay,
I'll second that.
Monson and Perkins, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good work, everybody.